All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the third session of the third and final day of the 2023 North American Virtual Reference Conference. I'm Jennifer Cox, Virtual Reference Coordinator of Answerland, the statewide virtual reference service administered by the State Library of Oregon. I will be your moderator for the session, along with Carla Fall, Reference and Outreach Instruction Librarian at Minitex. Attendees, your video and audio have been turned off for this session. If you have a question, please use the Q&A section. There will be approximately 10 minutes at the end of the presentation for questions, but don't hesitate to drop them in the Q&A section as you think of them. This session will be recorded and made available on the website where you registered. And then for this session, we have one full-length presentation, which is DEI in 2013, starts with me. Where's that? Sorry, I might have copy and pasted that incorrectly. Presented by Dr. Elizabeth Johnson, Vandy Owen, and Robert Bell. And I will now turn the mic over to them.
Okay, I'll unmute myself and I'll try to share the screen. I feel Murphy's Law always gets in the way, but is the PowerPoint actually loaded? Can everyone see?
Yes, up on the screen.
Wow, Murphy. Okay. I thank you for attending this session. My colleagues and I think started this based upon just a lot of demographics that are changing at our library. Folks are, like myself, are new, and before we can get somebody else on board, there's another new person. And so I suggested we start talking about how DEI is and should be individualized here at Tennessee State University's libraries and media centers. So what we did was we looked at commentary that discussed diversity, equity, and inclusion from ALA and TLA's perspective, but it just seemed like hollow words, something that really wasn't personalized. And thus we said, well, maybe we should consider some questions. And one question or one concern that we looked at is there are people who we may have forgotten to think about them when we think about DEI. Workers with disabilities, and these disabilities may not be visible to us. These disabilities or challenges may exist and we don't know anything about them. We haven't forgotten about coworkers who are living with AIDS or HIV positive. And these are challenges still existing on our campus today. Now, while we may be able to see someone who is physically pregnant, we still don't know some of the challenges that they go through before, during, and after pregnancies. So with that, we started asking some questions and looking for some sources to find some answers. And one source that I've asked to be placed in our panel script is the article by the Texas lawmakers who were saying, you know, we don't want DEI policies involved in our employment practices. And then the pushback that they received. And so I said, now, if we get some candidates coming in from Texas, are they running from a land that says we don't value DEI? I also thought about, and we shared, the declaration. That's one of the attachments. Do we have a declaration? Do we have a personal declaration of how we are trying to promote diversity, equity, inclusion here at Tennessee State University's libraries and media centers? The last two handouts connected with some questions on this page. The handout I really loved was Chris Borg's blog post and just took a couple bullet points from his post. And the reason I included his post is he was showing we need to have a discussion that's bi-directional. That's not just me at the workplace, but me in my communities, me in library information science, me on a global level. And that's what I hope our DEI language and personalization feels like. So I was really impressed with that. And then the last narrative that we included in our packet was the neurodiversity in the workplace. Here most recently, I had a staff member when I was the director of libraries at the College of Southern Idaho, who would go to neurodiversity sessions. And I didn't ask that colleague why she wanted to go to those sessions. Each time she would go, I just said, did you find it productive? And she would say, yeah. And I was like, well, then keep going. So I don't know how or what challenges she was facing, but she felt that when she went to these neurodiversity sessions, she was empowered, she was strengthened. And I think that's important that we don't necessarily label someone neurodiverse, but if they're having some challenges and they want to be in conversation with others who are experiencing neurodiverse challenges, then we should support that. So that's the background on how all this got started. Now I'll let you learn more about my colleagues and how I think that we're a special DEI melting pot, and this shows up on so many of our interviews. So now I'll flip the mic over to Rob Bell.
Yes, good afternoon for those of us in this part of the country, and good morning to some of you on the West Coast. My name is Robert Bell. I'll go back a little bit into my history. I have kind of a strange history with libraries. Not strained, but strange. I am originally from Central Ohio. I grew up in Ohio farm country. My high school actually gave us 2 days off a year to attend a soybean festival. We had a soybean queen, of all things. It was very rural, very white bread, pun intended, America. I attended Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. So if there are any Bobcats out there, hello. But lovely program down there, and got really interested in the diverse environment that Ohio University had fostered. So my best friend to this day is a Japanese American who I met at Ohio University. And I also acquired a women's studies certificate while I was there, got interested in social issues and so forth. Still didn't have much interest in libraries other than visiting him for reports and research and so forth. But was very interested in Japanese culture, Japanese language and so forth, and East Asia in general. Studied Japanese for a few years, did my first master's at USC, and then from there I kind of scrambled over to Japan with my Japanese language ability, worked in Japan for a couple of years, and enjoyed it. Japan's a wonderful country. I highly recommend it. But I didn't feel like I was going anywhere career-wise, and decided that I wanted to do something with my first degree at USC, which was in film and media studies. So I applied for University of Michigan and was accepted to the archives program initially, but there was no real connection at that time between archives and film study. There are some programs today at UCLA and others, but at that time it was kind of rudimentary. So I kind of switched over into library science and got involved with libraries. Started working as in technical services at the University of Michigan, and really had a great experience. The graduate library, Hetcher Graduate Library at U of M is just fantastic. Made some great connections there. Spent a few years working in California libraries, a couple of institutions there in a public library. And then I met a Thai woman, now my ex-wife, that we married. And then we moved to Thailand together in 2011. So I spent the next 8 of the next 9 years working in Thailand. 3 of those years working as a library manager for an international school in Chiang Mai, Thailand, northern Thailand, and then spent a year starting an elementary school library in Ningbo, China, which is, if anybody's familiar with China, a couple of hours south by bullet train from Shanghai. So returned to Thailand after a year in China, and spent 4 years working as a lecturer at a couple of universities in Thailand before the pandemic hit, and we all know what happened then. So then I returned to the United States in 2020, and since I'd had this kind of broad experience working in other countries, in library and academia and so forth, I really wanted to try to apply that to my career. And when the position opened up at TSU, I thought it would be a really good fit for me, because I've had a lot of experience working with people from different backgrounds. I mean, California is very diverse, as probably everybody knows, but it's not quite as diverse as being a minority in a foreign country. That was a very unique and very exciting experience for me overall. And I try to bring some of that experience with me to my current position. And also, as I said, my experience studying at Ohio University, which really opened up my eyes to diversity, because before that, I was just in rural Ohio, not really meeting anybody of any different background of my own. So a combination of these factors kind of brought me to where I am today. And I'm very pleased to be where I am and to be working with the people I'm working with here. So long story, but it's a long life, and I'm old. So, I just leave it there, and I'll move over to Ms. Van de Owen, I guess.
Okay, sure. As Rob said, I'm Van de Owen. I'm the electronic resources librarian here. And in July, I will have been here 20 years. And my story isn't nearly as diverse as Rob's. I started working in libraries when I was 12 years old, and I will be 56 this summer. So I have a long, history with it. I remember walking in and just remembering in 1979, I can learn anything about anything in this room. And I knew that's where I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And after being shoved into nursing school and it not going well, and backing back out of that, it chose me. It very much chose me. So I started out I'm originally from Memphis. I started out at University of Memphis when it was Memphis State University. Went to school there, worked there, had the opportunity to leave the city of Memphis and went to Middle Tennessee State, which is not nearly as diverse a student population as the University of Memphis. But diversity has never been an issue with me because it just has never been a thing. Being from Memphis, going to University of Memphis, it was just never in something that we thought about because our high school was diverse. My neighborhood was diverse. It was just there. So at MTSU, I got a bachelor's in elementary ed, a master's in administration and supervision with a K-12 licensure. And then I started working at a proprietary school, and I had a 5-year plan. Go to University of Tennessee, get my library science degree, and apply to either work at TSU or Vanderbilt because they had doctoral programs in higher ed administration. I knew I wanted to get back into academia because I enjoyed it so much working at University of Memphis, just the camaraderie that goes with it. And after my first semester of library school, I got a call from our now dean here at TSU saying they had a position open and asking if I was interested in it. So she sent me all the information. I stressed over and over that I had not finished my library program yet. And she said, that's okay. I think we have a workaround. But because I had that K-12 master's certification, what they did is they put off my tenure track until I finished my UT degree. So I actually had my job for 2 years before my classmates who were scrambling when we were at graduation. They were scrambling to look for jobs, and I was already starting my tenure track. But it never occurred to me to not take the job here, to not apply for the job here. It had nothing to do with it being an HBCU because that's never been an issue with me. I don't have any problems with the students. I've never had any issues with faculty. One of the things that I did think about last night, when I started working here, we had 11 people in technical services and I was the only white person. Now, almost 20 years later, we have 7 people in technical services and we have 1 Black person. It's almost all white women in our department now, which is, it's unusual, but then again, it's not. But like I said, mine isn't nearly as interesting or as diverse as Rob's, but it just, like I said, it never occurred to me to not take the job. And by Ms. Alvin calling me and asking me if I was interested, it fast tracked my 5-year plan. It put it ahead by 3 years.
I'll give my narrative since Rob and Vandy served on the search committee that brought me here, and I don't know if they're regretting it or not, but I enjoy working at Tennessee State for all was good and bad. I'm a native Minnesotan, got my first undergraduate degree at Jackson State, so I had left the Midwest and gone south. And 5 degrees later, I took a position to be the director of the College of Southern Idaho. But I saw this position at Tennessee State as an assistant director of operations and planning. And I took I applied for the position because it's a Research 2 institution and is trying to become a Research 1 institution, and I want to bring it there. I want to be involved in that process. How I got into library science in the first place is I was a professor for 14 years and said, I don't want to teach anymore. However, I had so many different collaborations with the academic library professionals around me at no matter what school I taught at. And I was always involved with my public libraries, no matter what state I lived in or what community I lived in. And so when I made the decision to stop teaching and work on the MLIS degree, it was just bringing it full circle. And I can say, in all seriousness, and I know this is being recorded, I like the fact that Tennessee State, in its own way, is a diverse school, with all of its good and with all of its bad. And I appreciate question marks that Vandy, Rob bring to me, and vice versa. Again, as we are having some high turnover for, I think, a variety of reasons, we are still, when we're on search committees, thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion more than just race when we're looking at a candidate. So with that, we want to move on to a couple of our last slides and allow questions and answers. Here we go. I was doing good. Oh, okay. Here we go. For this presentation, it was asked, what are we doing at Tennessee State to enhance diversity, equity, inclusion virtually? And so there were 3 points that we wanted to include and hope that it encourages you at your institution, is that often there are presentations that we think about having in person only, but moving forward, we want to include them virtually as we increase the number of students that are working on online degrees and don't always come to the campus. And so just as a little background, we have 2 main libraries and a separate media center. So the main media center and the Brown Daniel Library, where Vandy and I work, are on the main campus. But the downtown campus, which is geared to more of our graduate students, is the Avon Williams campus downtown, where Rob is. And just up until this last semester, there was also a separate media center there as well. So that's in transition, I guess, for all of its good and its bad. But we've thought about, some events that we're having and or have had, and how we will work on making them virtual, because we see that there are some DEI components in these events. So next Monday, I'll go down to Rob's library, and we will have an African-American reading, and we hope to simulcast it back here on mine and Vandy's library, so students can actually see fellow grad students reading for the African-American reading. Next slide. We as individuals, and we're trying to help those who are on the tenure track to be assistant or associate or even full professor, that there are personal things that they can do. So pretty much all of us at TSU in the library are affiliated with LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn has reached out and said, do you want to be a DEI leader? And if you're willing to make an 8-minute commitment every Friday, or every Friday that you're able to commit, you can be a DEI leader, where you engage with just another individual. Doesn't have to be somebody in library science, but you're engaging with another individual, and you're bringing up some DEI issues. So we're most definitely promoting DEI leadership through LinkedIn. We have an excellent makerspace a program here at our main library, but we have a limited physical space, and soon we'll be hopefully remodeling the library and expanding it. But often the sessions fill up, and there are other people who are saying, oh, I would have loved to have seen what you guys were doing. And so one of the makerspace events that are coming up is going to involve sewing machines. And I'm for sure trying to make sure that comes off virtually as well as in person, because we have plenty of students who have never even seen a sewing machine or know how to thread a sewing machine. Oh, 21st century students. And so we've worked with Mr. Jarvis Sheffield, who runs our makerspace, and asked, can we be placed on the agenda where some of these presentations are virtual. So those were a couple of events that we were saying we need them in person and virtual. Now I'm going to end with the book Dealing with Difference. Dealing with Difference was written by Dr. Chuck Gross. Dr. Gross was my master's thesis chair when I received my first master's degree at Mankato State. And what I decided to do was I don't receive any kickbacks from promoting this book, but I wanted to show you some of the exercises that he created whereby you may think about having this book placed in your library. And one exercise that he asked us to think about as we're dealing with differences is, how do you answer these questions? I think all human groups should get along because, and I was like, Chuck, what kind of question is that? And he says it's a question you need to ask yourself, not just as a fellow co-worker, but as a community member, both locally and globally. So that's one of the first, so when I embraced that attitude, I was more engaged in completing some of the exercises in the first chapter of his book. And so these are just short excerpts. These are not the full exercises, but I hope that it encourages you all to think about taking these exercises and or similar activities. The second exercise asks more what goes on in our thought processes. And so many times we sit in on these staff meetings and they'll say, what do you think about DEI? And nobody really has anything to say. But by the way Chuck organized the second exercise, you do start thinking about how are my value systems created, and then how do I then engage again with my communities on a local and on a global level. And the last exercise I wanted to share was when you looked at those personal value systems and you were able to label them, then make your own diagram. And I think you better understand how you complement DEI endeavors at your workplace. So there are, again, 8 exercises that I would encourage you to participate in. I hope I titillated your curiosity just enough for you to think about bringing this book to your academic library. And with that, we wanted to open it up, whether you wanted to hear more of our personal narratives or get a better understanding of Tennessee State and what we're trying to do to enhance DEI on in-person and virtual levels. And I'll end with that.
Thank you so much. I know personally I have so many questions, but we'll see what comes into the Q&A. Reminder to drop questions in the Q&A and any just statements or thoughts you have into the chat. I'll kick things off since I'm on the mic. So from my understanding, and I consider myself, somebody that tries to keep learning about DEI and how I can better utilize it. I understand that necessarily there's not a, necessarily an endpoint or goal. But if you were to share kind of things that we can be working towards to better incorporate that, I know some of these exercises, but any thoughts on how you might approach that in implementing it in a library, physical library setting or virtual?
Well, I'll unmute and begin because I believe some of you are back in my home of Minnesota. And while working on my MLIS degree in Minnesota, I challenged my classmates, my peers, just to think out of the box. That's how I start. And I think that's what makes us stronger co-workers when we think out of the box. Rob and I were having a conversation via email that maybe there was a miscommunication. And I can say that I reread Rob's email 3 times. And the third time I just put myself in his shoes and said, this is what Rob is trying to say to me. And maybe Rob reread my email 3 times and said, this is what Elizabeth is really trying to say to me. But I think we just read him like, Rob doesn't even get it. And I think I took the time to read it 3 times only because, like I say, Rob, Vandy, they share their narratives with me. And it's not just the local narrative, it's the global mindset narrative. Maybe it comes from religious affiliation, of no religious affiliation. Maybe it's from some, I gotta share this one. Vandy wears the turkey hat at holiday time. And now we laugh about it now, right? But Vandy was communicating some, just trying to make some connection. And she offered to let me wear her turkey hat. I passed, but I appreciate it. It sounds like little steps, but I declined. May I get Vandy to the mic and say, Vandy often wears T-shirts that have messages that we read in it. And I'll ask her about a T-shirt and we engage in conversation just about a T-shirt. Would you share, Vandy, just one T-shirt that you wear?
There we go. Okay. It wasn't letting me unmute. Oh gosh, which one? You have to tell them the turkey hat looks like a roasted turkey and it plays turkey in the straw and it dances. It's not just a turkey animal hat. But I've got one that says copy from one is plagiarism, copy from many is research. I'm a librarian, what's your superpower? I have a ton of this shirt. No, every time you call tech support, a butterfly dies. So I don't know specifically which one, Dr. Johnson, you're talking about. Just so y'all know, I do not work in the public areas. So I can probably get away with wearing a little bit, T-shirt and jeans or something more than the people who work the reference desk. But yeah, Dr. Johnson, I don't know which one specifically you're talking about.
You hit some good ones. Rob, would you be willing to share? We've had some discussions about how you identify religiously, and I think that opened us up into having some DEI discussion.
Yeah, I'll just go into detail since you asked, but I was brought up Protestant, baptized into Lutheran church, and after I moved to Thailand, I became less of a Christian and more of a Buddhist. So I still wear, it's a stupid thing to try to show on this kind of thing, a Buddhist amulet, which is something called Papa Ganet, which is Theravada Buddhism, is supposed to bring success and good luck into the future and so forth. But one thing I've learned in my experience working abroad is because so many people speak different languages, come from different cultures, different religious backgrounds, is you've got to speak slowly. You've got to be ready to take a step back when somebody says something that you're not quite sure what they mean, because probably they didn't mean what you initially thought they did. Especially in Thailand, they have something that's called Thaiglish, Thai English, where they take a lot of English phrases and they modify them so they fit more into the Thai culture. And they can be a bit perplexing at sometimes. And sometimes the meaning doesn't carry through the way you think it does, or the way they think it does, actually. So I brought that back with me to the United States. And I have to tell you, the assimilation process, moving from the United States to another country is difficult. But I found it to be more difficult coming from another country back to the United States. We have a lot of issues here, and many of them are related to DEI that other countries don't have to deal with, at least not in the same scale. Japan has some racism, of course. Thailand does in different kinds of ways. And then we have our own issues along those lines as well. But for example, one thing that Thailand does amazingly well that America is still struggling with is they don't have issues related to the extent that we do around transgender and non-binary. I had students in my classes, I worked with people, colleagues who did not identify as cisgender. And it was very common to have them in my classes. And even though initially I was a bit surprised and a little bit confused about, because it's nothing I had any experience with, but I learned to treat them with as much respect and fairness as I could. And I had one student who was non-cis female who told me that she thought I was one of the fairest instructors that she ever had. And I took that as a huge compliment. She didn't mean it only as far as grading and things like that, but just in the way she was being treated in the classroom. And I tried for me, and people who have been teaching for quite a long time say that they learn as much from the students as they teach to the students. And I think that was really true in my situation. And I'm trying to impart that upon the people I work with here and my colleagues and so forth, and the students I work with at TSU. So another little kind of rambling message, but it's amazing what you can learn when you don't even think you're trying to learn. Things just, situations pop up and you adapt and adjust as best you can. And if you're an intuitive person, a sensitive person, you try to take that and as a learning experience and share it with others as best you can. So
I love your medal, because
Oh.
I wear one of St. Jerome, the patron saint of libraries and librarians, but I'm also raised Protestant.
Now, I didn't even know this about these colleagues, but I have to share in answering your question. I have to tip my hat to Carla. When I was in Minnesota and did some virtual reference library work underneath Carla, she really taught me, excuse me, to think out of the box as I'm preparing. And this was like for Minnesota hullabaloo days. So, you were thinking that most of the questions were going to be about Minnesota. And I was ready, I thought, until it was part, Minnesota that I didn't live in, like the Iron Range, and some questions like, oh boy. But from those questions and from starting that experience doing virtual librarian that way, in those downtimes, it made me research even more so that I felt I could be more engaged with someone who had a question about life on Minnesota Iron Range, or I've been Duluth, but questions about Albert Lee of Minnesota that I really didn't know, or I thought I knew, but that it just got me sparked. And then there were sometimes Carla would say, Elizabeth, you went above and beyond, because I was so thirsty to share what I had learned in my downtime. So maybe in answering your question, how it all gets started is that one question gets us thirsty, and then we want to share and learn even more. Thanks, Carla.
That's wonderful.
You're very
Sounds like
welcome.
curiosity is a big part of that. Sorry, Carla, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just want to add that I have to say, by far, you were so engaged in every chat session that you were in with every student. I was so impressed.
All right, we have a question that's come in. So I'll go ahead and read it. Amanda asks, do you have any suggestions for norming DEI for all library staff across different departments?
Maybe one of the ways that we normalize it is that we bring it up, as Rob was saying, in that, we're thinking about it from other individuals' shoes. Doesn't mean other individuals based upon their race. It could be based upon other individuals on so many other factors that we may not even see. So I think the normalizing it is having more of the discussion. And I was kind of tongue in cheek when I was talking about Vandy and the turkey hat, but it did start some serious communication. I'm not putting the hat on.
Dr. Johnson, the most interesting thing though is the tattoo. So Dr. Johnson won't tell you this because it's kind of mine to tell. I have a spine tattoo of a Library of Congress call number. And it's in the Z's. So it's libraries and personnel, academic, 09 for my last name, and 1967 for my date of publication. So I have a spine label on my spine. So that shows that it's just the true librarian at heart thing. So she cracked up when I told her about that.
And I think that's all you really need to know about Vandy in a nutshell, right? Somebody who would go to that extreme to prove her dedication to libraries. That's all you need to know.
That was my 50th birthday midlife crisis, planned for 3 years before I did it.
Fantastic.
Reminder to drop those questions into the chat. Just a comment. It really sounds like what Michael was saying in the keynote, that you all are bringing yourselves to your librarian work, which then allows others to do the same, and appreciating when somebody does that, and being open and curious about how, you know, they can be incorporated and make sure that they're reflected in what we offer as, you know, a space for our students to be themselves.
We have a library assistant here that really goes above and beyond to make the, you know, relaxation zone, and she's doing a lot of things where she's got coloring pages and different, like we did the blind date with a book, and she's got a jigsaw puzzle section, and she is in library school now also, but she is just on fire getting various things done. And she's having fun with it, and it's fun to watch the students just gravitate to it. And it's things that we've never done before until she came here and started working.
Yeah, I think that speaks to how we normalize it. It has to be that we converse about issues. If we can converse about, you know, an oil change or finding an electric car station to plug our cars in, it starts with something that simple. It starts with something that simple, and connecting it to our DEI issues as colleagues.
And then just a reminder that all the handouts will be available on the event page. And also they're in the chat currently. Oh, I got a couple chats coming in.
Since we've got a little bit of time, Dr. Johnson, you probably have heard recently the comment from what's her name, from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, about wanting to divide the country into red states and blue states. What do you think this kind of mentality or this kind of thinking, how does this affect DEI moving into the future? How can we kind of overcome that? I'm not saying that necessarily she's wrong. I don't agree with her, but you know what I mean. I don't want to be political here, but how do you think we can kind of get around this, move forward?
No, you know, and I appreciate that. And weird enough, this sounds like some of the discussions that we actually have. I think part of the challenges, and again, I'm going back to talking about normalizing DEI, and then how can I address a colleague who might have this position of saying, you're either this or you're that. And I'm like, there are some that are a combination of both, dependent on the issue. And I think that's how I would, you know, answer the question or try to be engaged with that colleague. While I don't understand, I'll use the example, while I don't understand all the challenges that my staff member went through wanting to attend neurodiversity, however that individual was labeling themselves with a whole bunch of apples and a whole bunch of oranges and a whole bunch of pears, and maybe tomorrow she's a tangerine kind of, all of that is her. And so because of that, because of we're apples, oranges, pears, and tangerines, and then on a leap year, you might even throw in a kumquat, since that makes up all of us, we can't just be one or the other, you know. So my political stance is just one part of who I am, the individual, but I'm made up of so many more components. And I would hope that you would want to engage, learn about, work with me being all of that, and not just, you know, the one thing, the red or the blue. Living in a red state, having lived in a blue state. Oh, come on. We just live in. I hope that answers.
We've all got to find a way to get along, to live with each other. It doesn't matter what colored state we come from or whatnot. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of challenges going on in academia and in public school libraries and so forth. And a few of the states are a little bit more trying to be more exclusive, trying to exclude people. And yeah, normalizing DEI, it's not an easy process. I think as I said, my approach is to kind of take a step back and try to evaluate the situation a little bit more broadly, but everybody has their own techniques. They've got to find a way to do it if they actually want to, and they've got to want to before they're going to be accepting. Otherwise, we wind up with this kind of black and white mentality, red and blue mentality, and we've got to find a way to get past that. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like the best connections that I've had with people are, you know, it's finding that connection point, right? As you know, we all have things in common. It's not always the differences, right? And coming open to knowing that our students or faculty members or whoever is showing up at our public service points, our virtual spaces, they come with their own sets of understanding about who we are and what we do. And I've found the best interactions is when I am able to share a little bit of myself and open up to have people let me know who they are and be accepting of that as well. I know like a hot button thing. This is like such a small thing, but a large thing. And I think it's just that opposing viewpoints, if you will, which is just on our campus, just the openness of people that want to wear masks and people that don't want to wear masks right now. You know, there's still a little bit of that difference, and just wearing a mask or not wearing a mask can just mean so much, you know, to a person or what they assume about a person. And you know, it's always interesting, but there was a statement that you know, came out from our school that was just like, just know that it's okay for you to wear a mask or not wear a mask on campus, and please respect everybody for whatever their reason. And that may change too, you know, somebody at any given moment, or they might be, you know, having been exposed recently and just trying to be conscientious, or, you know, all of these things. So I think it's in the little things, but also in kind of the larger things that in life. Anyway, I don't want to take up all the time talking. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming to the session and participating and showing up as yourselves as well. Please. Oh, we do. Oh, it popped in. But please fill out a short evaluation of the session. Okay. Question, have you incorporated your DEIA initiatives into your collection development policies or practices?
No, and part of that, well, okay. No in collection development policies, yes, in how, part of my position as the Assistant Director of Operations and Planning, I'm working on our website for new employees. And so some of these resources, kind of similar, like neurodiversity kind of support that's here on this campus. And so without labeling it, without ostracizing it, we include that as part of the new employee training. So with our collections development, I would have to say, and it's hard to say, a lot of our collection development right now is connected to us trying to become a Research One institution. So what we're spending a lot of monies on and expanding and developing is often connected with those programs, those departments that are bringing in the biggest grant monies. Now, in an ideal world, when we get that R1 status, that we can look for DEI within each discipline, each program. But right now, if a department is really bringing us a lot of grant money, a lot of energies are going in that direction. But overall, this is still a value system for the library of DEI concerns and collections. Let Mandy speak.
See, and I think it kind of depends on the representative too, because we work on a subject librarian system where I'm the liaison for the graduate school and the College of Education. So the things that I purchase, I may be really looking for diversity, but the person who is, doing the dental hygiene program, that may not be their thing. They may not be looking for something like that. So I think it may kind of be on a, I hate to say department by department basis. Rob, because I know that you're College of Business, right?
I do business, accounting, law, yeah. I also do Asian studies, even though we don't technically have a fund for that, but I try to buy a little bit more broadly in those areas. But we use Midwest to do a lot of our book purchases and so forth. And I don't find a lot that I'm coming through the pipeline that is actually very DEI friendly. I also subscribe to ALA Choices and some other things, so there's a lot more variety coming through those, and I can search for those in Midwest, and they usually have them, but for some reason, maybe if the parameters aren't set correctly, I don't get those as suggestions for me to purchase. I took an interesting webinar the other day, and can I talk about a vendor? Can I use a vendor name? Is it allowed? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's just
okay.
Yeah.
It was with ProQuest Clarivate, and they were talking exactly on this topic, and they were saying that they're coming out with a product that is DEI across all disciplines, because LC and Dewey don't do a great job with DEI. It's all broken down, as we know, by subject area. So there isn't just a collective area. There are some small collective areas for these subjects, but related to DEI. But that's something to keep an eye open for. There might be a product that's specifically designed to kind of pull these out. And then also, they mentioned in the webinar that using, when their ProQuest is cataloging these new subjects and these new products that they're trying to market, they're using 472 different terms to kind of pull this out. So they're coming up with their own vocabulary because LC is trying to keep up, but they're slow. And Dewey also is behind the ball as well, behind the 8 ball as well in this. So there are some products that are going to be coming through in the next year or two that will address some of these issues and hopefully make collection development a little bit easier. So I know I talk too much, but
Well, I'll give, you made me think of an example. One of the professors wants me to do a lit review connected to health policy students, health policy majors, and asked if I would get some articles ready that are specifically talk about healthcare policies among BIPOC populations since COVID. And I was like, they give you 36 right quick. And it was just at the professor's request. And so now that might be part of our training that we give, just some examples when we give lit review kind of library instruction training that started just as a professor's request. BIPOC issues connected to healthcare policies since COVID. Hope that helps.
All right, we're running a little over. I just want to give a quick thank you for all the volunteers that have been involved with planning and running the conference and for making this session and conference possible. Thank you all for a great session today. I know I learned a few things about how I can better approach this topic in the library that I work in. And thank you all for attending the conference this year.
thank you, everybody. Thank you for putting it together.
Thank you all. Thank you, Elizabeth, Mandy, Rob. Wonderful session.
Mhm.